Welcome to Lead with Hope, the podcast where we explore the power of hope, leadership, and resilience in today's world. I'm Brandy Kelly, and each week I will bring you stories, insights, and actionable advice from leaders, innovators, and changemakers who are using hope as their compass to navigate challenges, create positive impact, and inspire others to do the same. Whether you're a seasoned leader or just beginning your journey, this podcast is here to remind you that no matter the obstacle, hope is the fuel that can drive transformation. So let's dive in and discover how you can lead with hope. Welcome back to the Lead with Hope podcast. So I have a question that I want you to ponder as we get started. How do you reignite your passion when you're struggling to find joy in the daily grind of education? Well, our guest today, Dr. Chris Jochum, helps us answer that very question. He is the author of the Department Chair, A Practical Guide to Effective Leadership, and the host of the Department Chair Leadership podcast. His book, You Don't Have to Leave to Lead, is a practical guide to teach leadership, and it's set to release soon. So, Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Well, Brandy, thank you so much for having me. A joy to be here with you.
Well, I'm glad you're on with us today. And as we're getting started, I love this question. This is usually the first question I ask my guest, and it is just to tell us your story, whatever that might entail. I'm curious what personal experiences from your over 2 decades in education have now shaped the mission and the message that you're on today.
Well, I appreciate you asking. I guess without giving you the long version, I became an educator the same reason a lot of people do, is I had great influences. And I grew up in a rural community in western Nebraska where, whether you wanted to or not, the school was the heartbeat of the community. While my teachers may have told you I had a penchant for being ornery, I was nonetheless a good student and excelled in extracurricular activities. And so I guess I was always very fortunate that I had strong influencers in my life. The adults that were influential just also happened to be, a lot of them were teachers and coaches. Mm-hmm. And that really showed me the transformative power that an educator can have. Enabled me to be a first generation college student, graduate, went on to be a K-12 teacher. And so when I think, I guess maybe the fast forward version, Brandy, of my own mission and purpose and message, at least with as an educator, and then now trying to help other leaders, mm-hmm. It's because I was so fortunate to have great mentors, great educators who spoke into my life, who used their influence when they probably didn't have to. And in some small way, both through my day job and then through the things that I do in addition to that, I hope that I've had and continue to have that type of impact on other people moving forward.
Yeah. Is there a specific person that you can identify, or you would like to identify here today, that has really had an impact on you and the trajectory of your life?
Yeah, and like most people that were influential in our life, they may not realize it. And there's probably 100 of us out there that they spoke into. As I sit here today, a person that was so influential was my high school football coach, a man by the name of Bill McAllister, who we referred to as Coach Mac. And if you were ever an athlete, regardless of how many coaches you had, I always say there's one person that reserves the title of coach. Yeah. And that would be it for me. And he was so influential in a number of ways. First and foremost, very strong Christian man. We were very involved in FCA. That was over 30 years ago, Fellowship of Christian Athletes. The other thing is, I look back now and understand what I've been able to do and how I've been able to serve. That was the first time that I was witness to a turnaround culture. Mm-hmm. To taking something that, at least if you go by wins and losses, was not healthy, dare I say toxic, yeah, and understood on a day-to-day basis what it takes to be excellent and understand that it isn't necessarily pretty. It isn't always fun, but I tell you what, the end result is worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's someone that I, looking back years ago when I was in high school, um, on a number of levels was very influential and certainly encouraged me. One of
Yeah.
many teachers and coaches that were influential encouraged me to go into education.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's about the relationships. I always say that, and that influence shines through in your life and your leadership, I'm sure, still yet today. So, with that, you emphasize leadership as influence through
Mhm.
relationships, through courage, through character, through service. So, what specific habits, maybe habits that Coach Mack instilled in you at a younger age? I don't know, but what habits or practices do you see that are essential that you encourage leaders to cultivate?
Well, and I appreciate, and I know habits is a part of your foundation and your mission and part of your acronym for hope. And anyone listening is, we have to. You really want to make sustainable change. You have to work on your habits.
Yeah.
I think, one thing that I've carried with me is, and I was fortunate to, based upon where I grew up, how I grew up, the family I grew up in, to always have a pretty good work ethic.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it just reinforced in me, and I've continued to carry that, is whatever is important to us, whatever we say is one of, a high priority, a guiding value.
Mm-hmm.
If we are not engaging in behaviors, habits, and words that align with that on a pretty consistent daily basis, then either we don't value those or we need to significantly overhaul our daily habits. And so I would say one of those first lessons I learned early on, is, if you want to accomplish something great,
Mm-hmm.
you have to be intentional, even if it's one or two things on a daily or weekly basis that align with that. Because, as you know, success amplifies, it grows with interest. And over time, we look back and we've probably accomplished more than we ever thought we could.
Yeah, I love that intentionality piece. And I think as educators, there's a lot of educators out there, a lot of type A personalities, a lot of by the book, follow the rule kind of people. And oftentimes, I know I've fallen into this pit hole, is I try to do too much too fast. And we have to be, I think, intentional. We have to be consistent, but we also have to start simple with one or two changes.
Mhm.
We can't completely overhaul everything in our life in 24 hours. We have to start simple and make it, like you said, intentional. And then that compounds with consistency.
Exactly. And that's something that, as an educator, that in my day-to-day job as a department chair of a rather large teacher education program, you hit the nail on the head, Brandy. I'm so fortunate. I get to work with wonderful humans,
Yeah.
some of which are traditional college age, some are not, but they want to be teachers. But there's two sides to that coin, and a lot of us are type A.
Yeah.
A lot of us are type A, and we're people pleasers, and we feel bad when someone feels bad. And
Mhm.
and I think it's so important to recognize that those in education who would raise their hand and say, "That's me," is that you can't do it all. You have to give yourself some grace. You have to set some boundaries, and breaking it down to, what can I do just for today? What's
Mhm.
one win that I can create or have for today? Um, I think that's very impactful because, again, I'm fortunate to work with some traditional age college kids that, wow, they want to do it all at once.
Mhm.
And despite their intentions, that's probably not a good idea, nor is it healthy, certainly for big future or first year teachers.
Yeah. And life is complicated. Humans are messy, and that's what education is all about, is working with people, working with students, colleagues, administrators, what have you. And I think in order to build and sustain a healthy culture, we have to start from a position of self-love and self-compassion. And in order to do that, we have to we have to look at ourselves in the mirror and really evaluate what is it that we prioritize. Back to
Mhm.
your point, what is important and what is the kind of life I want to build? Because otherwise, we're just going to keep chasing the goals or the to-do list or whatever is the next step in that line of things to do. And there's always going to be a million things to do. But if we get clear on what we prioritize and then build the life we dream of, it's going to be more sustainable.
Yeah, I really like how you said build the life we dream of.
Mm-hmm.
We, at least in with my colleagues and our faculty, uh, I feel like the coach of an all-star team. We have great people, and we have those conversations with our future teachers about self-care, about establishing those boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
because there's many issues out there and questions right now with people leaving the profession or going into it, but I do think that if we can give those in the field, which I know you're wonderful at, and those going into the field,
Mm-hmm.
maybe a better toolbox, give them some permission, and realize that teaching's one of those jobs. I guess it's probably like working at the post office. Is even on your days off, the mail's never going to stop.
Right.
And so you just have to make a decision when you're going to, take care of yourself and do those, I guess lack of a better term, those self-care things that we all know we should do, but probably don't do enough of.
Right. Yeah. It's hard. It's hard to step back. It's hard to rest. It's hard to set those boundaries. But I think that in order to build that sustainable, healthy culture and to discover or rediscover the joy in our work, that's exactly what we have to do.
Yeah. I think, some of the work that we've done and that I've done, both through my writing and with speaking and things, as you mentioned, kind of going back, you said, people are messy, and I have what I call a servant leaders or a teacher leaders credo. Those, to me, teacher and leader are synonymous. And one of the first ones is I'm in the people business, and people are messy, and I'm a people, right? Pardon the grammar. And I think that's so important to realize that, especially in education, and there are other professions that truly are helping and people-based professions, but we're dealing with the most unpredictable variable element on the planet, and that's a human being.
Yep.
And at best, statistically, if we can affect even a small percentage, it has a huge impact. And so, not sure if that's, somewhat in line with some of your previous questions or the work that you do, but, I personally found, personally and professionally, that is also very important to just to let our teachers realize that you're in the people business. People aren't perfect. You'll never be a perfect educator, and you'll never have a perfect group of students, and they'll never have a perfect teacher.
No. And sometimes progress is or should be the goal. We have to realize that change starts with me, and surround ourselves with people that are going to both encourage us and hold us accountable to help us along that journey. And we need to do that for other people as well. But we have to give ourselves grace, and we have to give other people grace too. And that can be built into both the mindset and the habits that we execute each and every day.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. Love that you touch on those points. And I'm sure we have a lot of educators listening, but for those that aren't, or for the educators that are, I think those are some great points to share with what we'll call your stakeholders, your community members, your parents. Not to go down that path, but I think we can never have enough advocacy for the profession, never have enough, showing people behind the curtain of the wonderful things. I think teachers are superheroes, and they don't even know it. And I think that's part of it. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah. And Chris, you bring up another good point, which is, teachers, educators, they are superheroes. They have so much to offer, and there are so many wonderful things happening. But oftentimes I think we underestimate the importance of not only the profession, but the day in, day out tasks that we execute. We know that educators make more decisions than some would say than a neurosurgeon. But it is our thought life that really dictates the kind of life we're going to lead. And we have to check those negative thoughts at the door. We have to reframe that, and we have to share out the great things that are happening in our schools, because as you know, many people, myself included, we've faced adversity. We've faced difficult times in our life. And so that kind of leads me naturally into the next question, Chris. Can you share maybe a defining moment, something where you might have had to choose faith over fear, and how that choice influenced your pursuit of excellence in your life?
Wow, great and tough question. I would say, and I've been walking around the earth, long enough that I probably have a few significant stories that come to my mind. But one that really is tied to probably in some way why we're talking today, and why I've been fortunate and blessed to do things that both as a chair and as someone that works with other leaders, is I before I came to my current position, I was had a job at a wonderful place that I had a personal connection to. Much like you, service is very important to me, and if I can do that in a place that I call home, that's close to family and friends, even better. And life has a way of working out as it should. Didn't necessarily understand at the time that things were going to work out even better, but long story short, I guess, is I had to take a leap of faith and leave something that had previously been what I may have even determined a dream job, and not only leave it, but move myself and my family to a new place. Take a job, as I just recently heard at a conference, is even when we get the most talented people in leadership positions, if it's the first time we've done that job officially, it's a leap, right? Yeah. It's a leap. And so I took a big leap, and luckily I made a lot of mistakes. I tell people, if you read my book, that's probably a list of things that Chris did wrong. And I'm trying to say, don't.
Yeah.
But it really was, not only was it truly a blessing in disguise at the time, now it's a blessing that I'm thankful for on a daily basis. But as I look back now, it took a leap of faith. I had to leave what was comfortable. I had to leave what was known and predictable to go into a life, certainly a formalized leadership, where a lot of things were no longer my own, right? My opinions and my thoughts were no longer just my own. They represented a larger organization. My free time wasn't necessarily always my own. I'm never not the leader of this department. And so that's something that I look to, Brandy, that now 9+ years later really turned out well. But at the time, it was a leap of faith, a lot of unknowns, and certainly would do it over again, but at the time was somewhat unsure.
Yeah. And that's where growth happens, in those moments of discomfort. Whenever we are feeling that we're not comfortable, there's some tension, there's some anxiety, we need to really step back and reflect, because that's probably a moment of growth. And there's a quote in my book, and it says, basically that same thing. It's an Abraham Maslow quote, and it says, we always have a choice. We have a choice to step forward into growth or back into safety. And when you think about that, we don't know what's on the other side. So we have to choose faith and step into that area of growth. So thank you for sharing that. That's an impactful story.
Well, thank you for asking. I think that's the first time I've probably articulated that out loud. So I appreciate you doing your job on that. Well done.
So the most recent podcast, I'm going from, instead of every other week, I'm amping it up a little bit, and I'm doing solo episodes in between my interviews. And last week, I released a podcast sharing what's giving me hope in the world right now. One of the things that's giving me hope, Chris, is an organization called the Restore Network. And the Restore Network is just helping foster families heal, so that we can take care of the many, many children in foster care in Illinois. And so I'm going to pose that same question to you today. What is giving you hope right now, whether that be in education, in leadership, or just in life? What's giving you hope?
Well, as you know, and I think we have this in common, on a daily basis, my faith gives me hope,
Mhm.
and I think that's always something that we can, I hate to say fall back on, but on tough times, we know that there's some endurance and some promises there. Um, from a professional standpoint, something that I feel so fortunate that I get to do, and my colleagues know this, is even though if you well we can find anything we want to find with the internet nowadays, but even though it's easier or too easy to find negative things about the teaching profession in our schools and all of that, side note, if you are a teacher listening and you have any social media presence, please start posting about why you love the job, and because you are in the majority, you're just in the minority when it comes to social influencers. But pardon my bird walk, but what gives me hope, Brandy, is on a daily basis, both physically, because we have an online or an on-campus program, we have a robust virtual program. I get to work with faculty and more importantly, students, full classes of students, 25 to 30 students that are excited to become teachers.
Mm.
And I tell you what, that gives me hope.
Yeah.
That gives me hope because yes, there's always going to be problems, but do your homework. There's always been issues with almost every profession, certainly teaching, that people say good and bad things about.
Mhm.
But what gives me hope is when I literally get to walk the halls and see full classrooms engaged and learning and excited, or our elementary ed majors who fight over who gets to do the next bulletin board in the hallway. That's a real thing, trust me. Um, that gives me hope because I see these young students, dare I say kids, but they're 18 to 22, 23, at least on campus. And I know that they're going into it for the right reasons. And I know the team that we've assembled is getting them into the right position. And that gives me hope because in many ways, as our school goes, communities go.
Yeah.
And so I feel fortunate that I have a front row seat to that. And I can't take a lot of credit because I get really, really good people who can do things I can't and get out of their way but support them. But I have hope on a daily basis because more times than not in my world, I work with people who are just on fire to go in and work with kids in the K or the pre-K-12 system. And that's pretty cool.
That is cool. That gives me hope. Just you sharing that right now gives me hope, and it takes me back down, that memory lane where I started out 24 years ago, my first job in education. I remember that. I remember that hope and that excitement and that sense of purpose that we had. I mean, goodness, we wanted to change the world. Well, heck, we still do. Let's face it, we still do, right, Chris? But
Yeah.
when you think back to your first job in education. I mean, that's pretty powerful stuff.
Oh, I was, and ironically, while teachers in my mind will never make enough, ironically, you think back, and I was so happy they paid me anything to get to do that, right? I was so
Right.
excited to teach and be on the other side of the desk, so to speak, and at least in my life, get to go to the office for when I wasn't in trouble. That was kind
Good
of a
reason.
nice
Yeah.
that was a nice change when I became the teacher, but um and part of the reason that I'm passionate about the work that I do both in the university and outside
Mhm.
is that I think we teachers still have that,
Yeah.
and it's just a matter of reconnecting with it and maybe viewing, especially as we get older. We mature, our minds are different, the way that we want to connect and leave a legacy is different. And just like I always say, just giving practicing teachers perspective and
Mhm.
perspective on where they're at, what they're capable of, and permission to maybe lean into some things that they otherwise wouldn't, which you do obviously do a great job of. So yeah, I think it's important for us to somehow always try to reconnect with that
Yeah.
initial desire for why we wanted to enter the classroom and the profession.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think that, as we move forward into our years, whether it's 10 years, 20 years, 30 years in education, you talk to those teachers, 9 times out of 10, it's not the kids, or it's the things that are outside of their control that wear them down. That's what makes it heavy. And so I love what you said, Chris, about just encouraging those that are listening to think about one thing they love about their community school, or about a teacher or an administrator. Put that on social media. Leadership 101, you complain or you criticize in private and you praise in public. Same philosophy here. Go to Facebook and share the positive things. And if you have a complaint or a concern, go to that person in private. I think that's very important.
Yeah, I agree. And I've reminded people this in other contexts, but, we're all in the same boat.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no such thing as a sinking and unsinking side of a boat. And there's a visual that I use sometimes, when I teach or give a presentation of that. And on the high end of the boat are two people criticizing those on the sinking end, trying to scoop the water out.
Yeah.
And we're all in it together. So even if you think, well, at least I'm not posting negative stuff. Well, but you know what? You have a great story to tell as an educator and administrator. And yeah, I would just encourage, we need to do more of that, because I think those folks are in the majority. Clearly,
Mm-hmm.
it's just the minority of those that maybe are less than positive is probably what fills our screens and our scrolling a little more than it should.
Absolutely. And by sharing the positive and focusing on the positive, that's going to provide even more benefits to you as the giver, because brain science shows that, that optimistic mindset, by cultivating that, it's going to decrease stress, increase productivity, and create a more fulfilling life. So I love that challenge. Let's call it a leadership challenge, to go share something positive today about your community school or a person in that community school. Share a story that is really going to connect with the joy and the value of teacher education.
Yes, because those stories are out there, and there are people that you can find. Certainly, there's some prominent principals, superintendents, teachers that are leading the charge, but we can't have too many of them. That's for sure.
No, not at all. So is there a passion project or something that's really filling your cup right now that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Oh, wow. Well, in addition to getting the final touches on my teacher leadership book, one thing that I guess I just finished that was a culmination of a passion project that we hope to replicate is I do leadership training, development in K-12, higher ed, corporate space. But I was able to sit at the intersection a couple of my passions. So I used to be a Spanish teacher. And so I love going abroad. I take teachers to Costa Rica most summers so they can have the experience of what it's like to be a second language learner. And this summer, myself and a colleague, we were able to offer an on-site teacher leader workshop in the school, in the language school in Costa Rica. So while the undergrad students were taking Spanish, we had, I think, 7 practicing teachers, one of whom was an administrator. And we were able to offer an on-site multi-day workshop. And we called it, Pura Vida Leadership. Pura Vida is like saying aloha in Hawaii. It can be used for anything. And we called it Pura Vida Leadership, Live, Learn, and Unwind in Costa Rica. And along with my colleague, Dr. Betsy Crawford, who does amazing work in her own right, that was kind of the culmination of something that had been in the back of my mind. And then I was able to make it even better with my colleagues' help. So we hope to do that again, not only in Costa Rica, but maybe, through weekend workshops for teachers. And then I just continue, want to start another book, a general leadership book, and I'm just very passionate, have some engagements coming up, both inside and outside of higher ed for speaking that I'm excited about. But yeah, since you asked, we just recently were able to to finish up that workshop and that study abroad experience. And it was a culmination of a few years of discussion. And so that was very rewarding.
Yeah, that is very cool that you're able to go to Costa Rica with your students and your colleagues. That is definitely a different culture. Speaking of culture, so I'm curious, when you're at Costa Rica and you're doing this work, do you work with just the people that you take with you, or are you sharing this information and this training with people from Costa Rica as well?
Well, at this point, it was just the students that we,
Okay.
quote unquote, brought with us. Now,
Right.
they were primarily from the state of Kansas, but we had some from other states because of our online presence. But at this point, it is designed for teachers and admin
Okay.
in the U.S. Although one goal of mine is to maybe connect with some schools there in Costa Rica
Mhm.
and offer professional development to their staff. Although that's there's some differences in how they train and so we'll see how that goes. But yes, when we do that, it's anyone's welcome, but it's primarily for those that are in the U.S. and they join us on the trip.
That is so intriguing. And, it would be a whole nother show, Chris, but I would love to talk more about just the culture and the differences between the culture there and the culture in the United States, and the things that we could learn from the way they approach life and leadership in Costa Rica as opposed to how we approach it in the United States. But as I said, this is only about a 30-minute show, so
Yeah,
that will have to be another topic for another day.
no problem. Happy to do it.
So, as we are concluding this episode of the Lead with Hope podcast, how can the listeners get in touch with you? How can they connect with you?
Well, Brandy, the easiest is you can just go to my website, and that is cjleadership.com. And that will have all of the things that if you want to listen to my podcast or connect to my book or when the new book comes out, it also has my email on there, which is chris@cjleadership.com. But the main place to start, the one-stop shop, would just be cjleadership.com, and that can direct you to questions you might have, as well as a way to contact me.
Well, I am grateful that we were able to connect through our mutual publisher, Road to Awesome Publishing. And I am hopeful that as we continue our work, Chris, that we will intersect once again in the future. And I just want to thank you for your leadership that's demonstrated through courage and compassion and an abundance of hope. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. And I can't wait to share this episode with the Lead with Hope community. Until next time. Thanks for tuning in to Lead with Hope, where we share stories and strategies to help you rise, lead, and redefine what's possible. If today's episode inspired you, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and leave a review. Your support helps us reach more leaders like you who are ready to lead with heart, purpose, and resilience. Don't forget to visit sparkhopeedu.com for resources, upcoming events, and tools to help you build a culture of hope in your life and leadership. We're so grateful to be part of your journey. Until next time, keep leading with hope.